Welcome everybody to ITDUG's December webinar series. We were a bit absent in October and November as we had a lot of clients going on. Hey, Shelby.
Hello.
Great having you. You can serve as our chief question asker.
As a what?
Our chief question asker.
Perfect. I'll make sure and have tons of questions, and I'll try to do my best.
Sounds great. No pressure. All right, so I'm going to share my screen to our quick little usual ITDUG intro before we jump into the conversation. As I was mentioning, this is our December webinar. We were aiming for monthly. We got 2 done in September, a little absence in October and November as we were busy growing our clients and our employee count. Hopefully adding to the team is going to help us administer ITDUG even better and get these webinars more frequent and continue to give you guys some value. For those of us watching the recording who may not be familiar with ITDUG, got to it some other way. This group was founded May of last year by Tracy Harden. She has her own IT firm in Kentucky. In August of 2018, she was looking to expand the scope to more than just IT Glue, where she originally founded it. Asked me to come help her grow it. And just over a year later, we had 1,000 members and literally started at 0 in May. I think by August, she had 200 folks. So it's done quite a good job growing. You can also see there's some phenomenal growth for the year as well. Please do keep inviting and keep participating. My favorite thing about hitting that 1,000 mark is I no longer had to post all the questions. You guys have been posting, even in my absence, answering each other's questions and helping grow each other's businesses and documentation practice, which I really appreciate. Thank you all for building an amazing community. A little bit about why I've chose to help administer this ITDUG group. One, you guys are my test bed, my sounding board. I serve IT services firms and MSPs in processes and virtual teams and tools administration. I do a lot of IT glue management for our clients as well as some other systems. And I love being able to go to you and ask you guys my questions or concerns or what you're seeing, or even just trolling the forums to see what's up lately and being able to share that with my clients. The power of many. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the QBR process. QBR stands for Quarterly Business Review. I think when we speak to Alex and Marnie here, we will see a different term besides QBR that I like, because we all know that quarterly is not always quarterly. It's certainly a term that has come up. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce Alex and Marnie, our special guest here. I met them both at IT Nation in Orlando back in late October. Brooke and I were cruising the Vendors Pavilion, and every single one of our clients is working with us right now on trying to improve the QBR process. And we have some templates and some documents and some processes for them. And some of them reference tools, and the fact is we used the only tools that were available and they had some benefit. And we ran into Lifecycle Insights. We're like, QBR tool? Okay. And we talked to Alex and Marnie for a while. Loved what their product was doing, loved their thought process, and the fact that Alex is also running an MSP where he's testing and living these theories. So I said, hey, why don't you guys come talk to us about ITDUG? Let's talk about the process and see where the conversation goes. And Shelby, you're a relatively new business owner, is that correct? Putting you on the spot.
Yes, I am.
All right, so nowhere to go but up. All
and
right,
hopefully
so
fewer bad habits to get rid of. So
right.
Let's look at the positive.
All right, so for Alex and Marnie, that's how we met. Tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll start the conversation about the QBR process.
So, okay, we've known each other, goodness, for my entire adult life, quite a long time. And one day we bumped into each other in the gym, and Marnie asked if I had any great ideas for software development. She had some programmers looking for work, and I went, "It's funny you should ask, because I have a problem I've been trying to figure out how to solve." And it basically was that IT documentation for quarterly business reviews just takes too darn long. It's too manual. We have automation tools for everything else, and we didn't have one for this. So we got some folks together, explored the market, really looked at what was out there, and we've built a tool that we hope can automate some of that, and at the same time help people fix their data quality and elevate their discussions in these business reviews to a more strategic level instead of a down in the weeds technical conversation.
Very cool. So Alex, tell me a little bit about your MSP and how that QBR process grew from nothing to something.
So we started just a lot like a lot of the MSPs out there. We started as a break fix shop. We started doing mostly residential and just a little bit of consumer. 2008 came around and put our biggest customer in a real cash crunch, and they were scattered all over our state. So we spent a lot of drive time, and we had the conversation with them that these fancy, at this point, new tools like LabTech could cut down on drive time, and in that way, at least put a fence around some of their expenses and cut some costs for them. They paid for us to implement LabTech. We started rolling it out to all of our other customers after that, and kind of adopted the MSP model in 2008, 2009. And we've been operating as an MSP ever since. My background is in sales. Tech was just a hobby. So this entire MSP thing is almost by accident. But, as I've gone, I see myself really as a problem solver. And one of the problems I was trying to solve was how to get in front of your customers more often, and how to get these QBRs delivered faster and with better data, and use them to escalate the conversation into a really consultative selling opportunity instead of a forceful selling opportunity.
Very cool. And you and I have had a couple of pre-game meetings just discussing the whole QBR process. So we actually have a QBR process up on our website at eurekaprocess.com. And Alex is like, I don't necessarily agree with all those steps. And we started talking about it. And I definitely saw the point. I feel like QBRs in our industry have evolved. But I also feel like there's the right QBR process for where people are at in their maturity level.
Absolutely.
Meaning, some of the most advanced QBRs you see, you look at those and go, wow, this is amazing. I could never do that. And you're selling yourself short on never. But the idea is to start somewhere. I mean, if you do print out, antivirus prevention reports and how many patches you've done, because somebody tells you there's a better option out there, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do the option you have. Do that one. Get the customer used to it, because frankly, the next time they see it, hopefully they've already digested that type of information. They can digest it faster the second time, and you can add more content as you go. But as you said earlier, Alex, the issue becomes there's all these reports, all this data. Who's going to read it? It takes you 6 to 8 hours to collect it, and I think you've heard some estimates of longer, maybe.
Yeah.
How do you deal with all that data times the number of clients you have?
Well, to your point, number one, don't let good be the enemy of great, or great be the enemy of good, right? Let's get a QBR out there. Let's get started, because in your first one, your client's going to want to see all the nitty-gritty details. It's stuff they've probably not been exposed to in the past. It's stuff that is all new. That being said, the third time you show them a user list or a patch report, they're much less impressed by it. So those are things that evolve as you work with that client as much as you build your process. So it's okay for your first one not to be perfect and for it to be less strategic and a little bit more technical. But you want to quickly get away from that, because if everyone is technical, your clients won't want to schedule them. They won't see the value. They won't want their CEO, their CFO, their all their department heads and your point of contact all tied up in a room that costs that client $500 or $600 an hour just in wages to go over technical reports they don't care about. So the real trick is to have the first one, continue to improve the process, and just make it one of these things that is an ever evolving, better every day type process. All the data lives in your tools now. You have it in ConnectWise, you have it in Automate or Ninja or one of these other tools. It's just a matter of extracting it. There's tools out there like ours that do it. You can do it all manually. We've got it pretty dialed in so that I can spend less than a half hour building all my reports, and that includes binding them and printing them. And we put them all in a cutesy little booklet that is bound in clear front covers and bound in black back covers. Some people use folders, but you should be able to build that in 30 minutes if you've got it all dialed in.
And I know a lot of people have talked about, do you give less or more? And I believe that the client should dictate, but I also believe that if the content is easy to create, and if you're presenting it by hand, there's no reason not to give them more if you can give the conversation. And I call it dazzle them by the pound. How heavy does the content weigh? Well, you have been busy.
Yep. We bury some of the details in the back and generally pull to the front the more the short form reports. So, we might show them, a full asset list or a full user list, but we're going to pull to the front the list of users who maybe are our primary points of contact and just the things that we care about, so that we can go over what needs to be reviewed and give them a little bit of homework to dig into the details and the supporting data, if you will.
All right. So the question that I hear most often when I talk to the QBR folks is, what does the process look like step by step?
Sure.
When people ask me, I give them the very general guideline, which is that, one, the process starts way before meeting day.
Yeah, we recommend about 3 weeks.
Okay, so describe your process to us.
So 3 weeks out, we reach out to the client, we send them an agenda, and we tell them these are the things we would like to discuss with you in our quarterly business review. We tell them about their first quarterly business review when we sell them. We try and have the first one about 90 days after we bring them on board. So they're pretty used to it. We send them that request and we say, here's the agenda, here's what we'd like to cover. Please add anything to it that you think is valuable so that we can come prepared to discuss it. The real trick to that is that we are killing off the need to discuss the poorly executed service ticket at the meeting, because what they're going to respond with is, well, I want to know about this Windows 7 thing that's coming up, and little Johnny was mean to Sally on the phone. We need to talk about this ticket. And our response to that is easy. We circle the wagons. We get our service coordinator and our director of operations, and sometimes myself, on the phone. We call the client and say, Mr. Client, this service ticket's too important for it to wait. I don't want this to wait 2.5 weeks with you upset. Let's deal with this right now, and we can deal with the rest of it at our quarterly business review. We kick out that performance issue, get it killed off, and by the time we get to our QBR, they feel like we've been reactive to them and we've taken care of them, and then we can go talk about things like budget and finance and replacement and life cycle, and not about service tickets and patch quality and all the technical stuff that we don't care about. Once we get that agenda hammered out, we start to put together what we think is important to that client. On that agenda, we'll have a scorecard, which is a quick, very, very high level view of some of the things that these folks like to talk about. This is where you throw in your patch stats or your backup stats or your spam stats or your CSAT data. These are where you just literally take and print screen a report off of one of those tools and stick it on a page that you're going to whip through real quick and go, hey, look, we got excellent CSAT ratings. Your staff loves us. Or we only got 2 responses and we did 411 tickets with your folks. We don't know if your folks like us or not. Could you please nudge them and ask them to give us a little bit more feedback, because we can't improve if you don't talk to us. But we throw that stuff in there. It's a quick gloss over of the technical stuff so that we can get into things like held over action items from the last QBR, where we sit on their projects, and then really start to dig into the client themselves. What's changing in the next 18 months? What does their industry look like? Is it being commoditized, or are they growing a ton, or are they looking to add people? What are things really looking like for them?
So how do you find all that industry information?
In my experience, the best way that we do it is just talking to our clients. We literally sit in those QBRs and every one, and how are things going in your industry? Do you feel like you're in a good place? Is technology helping you get where you need to go, or are you behind, and is it keeping you from performing? We do a little bit sometimes, especially with some of the core industries. We do a lot in education, so we're involved in webinars and in the industry groups on Facebook and LinkedIn and things like that. And sometimes we just, we live in a small town too, so we can stalk our clients at social events and in the news. But mostly it's just a matter of going where your customers go so that you know what they do.
Okay.
So, once we know what their industry is really doing and where they live in the industry, we can help to guide them. we use some of the reports that come out of our platform to review a budget forecast based on the asset list and based on some service contracts that we know that they have. And we'll sit down with them and show them what their IT expenses really look like for the next 6 months, for the next 6 years, and really what adding a piece of technology would do to them long term, and what replacing their existing technology is going to cost them, say, 3 years from now when their main servers go up for replacement and they have, instead of a $40,000 annual expense, maybe a $70,000 or $80,000 expense. So there's no surprises. We're talking about it 2-3 years ahead of time. We generally follow that piece up with simple quotes. You know, look, we've already shown you the data. We can show you proof that these computers are 7 years old. They need to go in the garbage. Here's the quote to replace them, please. Would you like to sign here today, or would you like me to send the electronic copy so you can e-sign? It's not an if. They know they have to replace it now. So our sales are now consultative, and we're not begging them to buy stuff.
Because the topic of money comes up and a request to spend money, do you ever get resistance like, you know, please don't come out here because I don't want to spend any more money right now?
You know, I get it less now than I used to. I used to have clients tell me, I don't want you to walk in my door because I know every time you do, it's going to cost me money. You know, you're going to come tell me I need to buy new servers, I need to buy new this or new that. Now I tell them about it 5 years ahead of time, and we're planning, and we're talking about at the end of the year, this time of the year, we're having a conversation with our clients. If you had a good year, next year is going to be an expensive one for you. Do you want to pull some of those expenses forward? You know, we're operating not as the CFO, but in line with the CFO, having high-level strategic talks about, is this the year to spend more money based on their business and where they are? And if you've presented them with a budget, if you've aligned yourself with their strategy, they're more likely to open up with you in those conversations and tell you that stuff.
Is there a vast difference in how this looks if you're working with 20 user network clients versus 200 user network clients?
Only in the amount of time that you spend in the room and the number of people that are in the room, because if you wind up with a 200 user client, they have 7 departments in the organization, and each of them has a slightly different strategy or a slightly different delivery goal. So they're going to need different technology in each one, and each one might be a little bit customized. And for one of my clients who's so big, we actually do about 3 of these meetings with different pieces of the department or of the organization, a department at a time, so that we can talk specific department budgets.
Wow. Shelby, where are you at in this QBR journey?
Oh, wow. Now you're putting me on the spot. Okay.
Under the bus you go.
I know you're new, so.
Well, I was trying to formulate a question around QBR, and so I am a one-man shop, and I started my MSP here in February of this year, and so I have 2 main clients, and one of them I'm struggling with, just because it's a situation where the leader, the director of the company, or the director of the organization doesn't like how things are working and wants, you know, puppies and rainbows and unicorns, and so trying to deliver like realistic expectations, and I think balancing, I guess trying to figure out balancing the I'm going to fix these issues that you have, but I'm also here to help you like forecast for the future, and not have something's broken, so now I got to spend money to fix it attitude. And I'm in the Midwest. I'm kind of out in the boonies a little bit, and so I don't have a whole lot of what I would call big MSP competition. We have like a couple break-fix shops in town, and that's about it. And so everybody here in this area, a lot of the people that I run into and stuff, they have no idea about what MSPs do or the value that I can give them. And so I would say I'm fighting the fixing stuff versus planning part. So, you know, well, I guess one of my questions would be, so if you have a quarterly business review with your client, is that something that you just do for them? That's not, I mean, you don't bill them for coming out and spending an hour and a half or 2 hours with them strategizing what they're going to do. That's part of your
That should be
package.
baked into your costs of your contract. And if you haven't baked that in, then you need to have the real gut check of, is this client profitable enough that I can just do it for free, or do I need to go address rates with this client? But what I'll tell you is, very rarely do QBRs end up not being a moneymaker for you if they're done right.
Right.
There'll be your opportunity to go sit in front of the customer and say, Mr. Customer, do you see this computer here that you're complaining is always broke? Well, it's 6.7 years old and it still runs Windows 7, and that's why you're having a problem with it. If we go ahead and replace it, we can fix that problem. Here's your quote. We walk out of QBRs with 5-figure checks all the time because of how we present it, because we've gotten past the belief that we're going to come in there and flood them with needless junk, because now we can show them why it costs so much to do what it does, and even what the cost of waiting is, right? Because if you're just having the conversation with the client that this computer is broken, you're not having the conversation about, and the computer next to it is only 6 months newer, and the one behind it is only 3 months newer.
Yes.
And there's a cascading problem here, right? So now they're all going to catch up with this. If I gave you a color-coded report that showed all of their computers in red, yellow, and green, so that your customer doesn't have to be technology savvy, and said, hey, in red, yellow, and green, let's start replacing red first. Let's get to yellow, and green will meet us in the middle as it gets older. We can fix that problem, and the customer doesn't have to be tech savvy. He doesn't have to know about gigabytes and teraflops and flux capacitors to speak the same language that we do.
Well, and at the same time, then it's about their data, not about you as the MSP trying to make a sale, right? Because this is insight on their data, not about you coming in saying you want to sell them a device. It's just a fact of the device.
Now, Shelby, if you have some not all-you-can-eat managed services, or they're break fix, and you're still curious how the QBR can play, I feel like I would count the QBR as a sales cost. Not that a QBR should be salesy, but by positioning yourself in this informational analysis almost and strategic planning, you can recoup that money. Plus, if you can work with that client to start treating IT as an asset versus a liability, I also think that softens the sale for managed services.
So let's talk about sales just in general, because my life experience was in sales. I just happened to be technology savvy. Number one, you need to early on learn what your customer acquisition cost is. In my MSP, it's something around $12,000 is what it costs us just to find and onboard a new customer. It's a big number. So it is way cheaper to spend a 6-hour QBR with an existing customer than it is to go find a new one. Do what it takes to deliver the right service to that customer so you can keep them, because losing a customer is one of the most expensive things you can do to your MSP. That said, MSP owners are generally much more technical than me and much less, salespeople or people, which is why I recommend a consultative sales approach, because very few of them can deliver the used car salesman approach and walk out in a good place, right? You have copier salesmen come into your customers all the time. You couldn't sell that way if you're the typical MSP owner. Copier salesman, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, on to the next. An MSP owner needs to be a strategic consultant, and through that, do that, and sales will follow. It just happens. It doesn't have to be a pushy, salesy conversation.
And that goes
Thank
along
you, guys.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Actually, we were probably expecting a different audience, but I love the fact that we have somebody newer in doing the entrepreneur thing in this market. I think it presents a unique approach to this content. I'm glad you're here, Shelby. And one more question for you, Shelby. Sorry to pick on you since you're the guy. Do you have a ticketing system, PSA?
Yes.
And what did you choose?
Zoho.
Zoho, and is that? And I'm less familiar with Zoho. I've definitely heard the name before. And do you track what type of assets your clients have?
Yes.
And is that through Zoho or an RMM?
So I'm Zoho Ninja Shop. So I have Ninja for my patching and antivirus, and then I use Zoho for my ticketing and CRM and all that.
And did you have other questions about the QBR process?
I think where I'm at specifically is like I don't have any QBR process in place. So how do you go from, I mean, like for me, you know, like I have a forecast of where I want to be and where I'm at for my business and where I want to be next year. And even next, you know, in the next 3 months, 6 months, I have that kind of forecasted out for myself. And I guess my thing is like, how do I help I guess, create that process for my clients?
I'm going to recommend two things. One's a little hard. One, hit me up afterwards, Shelby, eurekaprocess.com. We have a membership site that has some templates on it to start as well. Now, what I wanted to switch to is where Marnie comes in to have with the coding to help Alex. Now, you developed a software application to do the QBR, but that includes agendas and data collection. But I'm curious, where do you get the data from? Because I know ConnectWise is a big piece of that. Are there other products as well?
So we integrate with, pull from ConnectWise Manage, and then we pull warranty lookups from Dell, Lenovo, HP, et cetera. We're always looking to expand that, but that is where we pull from right now.
Okay. And I'm curious, in Shelby's case, I felt like I've seen a demo of lifecycleinsights.io before. And while the data collection was huge, piece from ConnectWise Manage, I still felt like the templates, the agenda, the stuff that you guys had organized that data in a logical fashion, and it showed the process. Shelby, would it be worthwhile to walk through that, even though you don't use ConnectWise Manage, just to kind of see how it's laid out? Because it's not about the manage piece. There's some pieces that wouldn't be as automated for you, but it would kind of show you the types of stuff that you could get started with preparing for your client QBRs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be extremely valuable.
All right, Alex, are you able to do a quick demo for us? It kind of shows the basics of how a QBR should work and how the software organizes it.
Let me share a screen here. And Shelby, I'll tell you my answer to your question on how to get started. Don't reinvent the wheel, steal it.
Yeah.
There are plenty of resources out there on what belongs in a good QBR. Our website is one of them. We've got some blog posts out there that are free. We'll send out one of our follow-ups to this meeting will be an email template. So we'll send you a little freebie as well. And Alan's got a bunch of resources that'll help you get aligned with some of this. This is Lifecycle Insights. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yep, you're good.
So this is the dashboard. We have a client picker at the top. So you literally just pick the client that you want to work with. You snag a client, you get to see some basic info about the client. We collect asset list data. So this is what pulls over from ConnectWise Manage. This will show our desktop PCs, workstations, what brand they are, all that kind of stuff. We can dig into each one and get a little bit more detail, warranty information, et cetera. But if you see this, we color code the report. So Windows 10 is a healthy operating system. We like it. If we get down here, of course, I picked the only client that doesn't have a Windows 7 machine left. If we go to a different client, you see that we're color coding. Windows 7 is yellow now because it's not end of life, but it's about to be. We do the same with warranties and with end of life dates. So we can pick and say, hey, for this particular customer, a machine that's over 5 years old, we're going to mark it end of life. And then they start to change red in this end of life column. So when I sit down and have that conversation with my client, we don't talk about whose computer runs like crap, because if they bought what I told them to buy the first time, their computers are all going to run okay for 4 or 5 years. We talk about the computers that are nearing end of life. We deliver them a nice, pretty Word document that you can mangle and edit. If there's a device on there that say you provide to your customer and you don't want them to see it, you can literally just highlight it and delete it off before you send the report. But this will tell the customer, hey, you've had this machine sitting around here, and this is the one that we own that we don't show them. So we delete that one off of there. But you can say, hey, this machine's 6.3, this one's 6, this one's 6. These machines need to be replaced. You get down here into things that are all green. Those are good. They're happy. They're healthy. You can change and edit the replacement costs. I was doing a demo with somebody and marked all those as CAD machines that were really expensive to replace. We do the same for their network equipment, anything basically that we have in our documentation platform. So if we've got it in ConnectWise as an asset, we're reporting on it here. We do the same with the user list, and we pull data from ConnectWise and Office 365, and we can show them the customer who has an Office 365 license, and that shows up in our PSA tool. For you, that would be Zoho. But we want to just true up Office 365 and Zoho and make sure they're using the same number of licenses that they're buying. We keep some really basic contract info, which rolls into their budget forecast. And the beauty of the budget forecast is that I can give it to them in any frame that they want it. I can give them a 6-year budget without detail, or I can give them one with asset detail included. Asset detail just shows which workstations they need to replace in which period.
There is a piece here between your contracts and your budget forecast that fascinated me the first time you showed me this, which might be relevant for Shelby and other future listeners as well, is that those contracts are contracts with other IT type stuff that's not you.
Correct. So the conversation that I have with my customer around that is, and the first time I deliver it, like I said, this is an evolving process. The first time I deliver my budget, none of these exist on here, or maybe my Office 365, if they buy it from me and their managed services exist on here. Maybe their Comcast bill or their ISP bill. But we sit down with the customer and say, hey, if you'd like to see more things show up here, you can show me a copy of your copier contract and I'll put it in here. You can show me your Ring Central contract and I'll put it in here. You can show me your contract for that fancy piece of line of business software that you have and I'll put it in here, okay? This is a data collection point and it's a huge win. You're doing it under the guise of delivering them with a nice pretty budget that shows them how much they're going to spend every month, every quarter, every year to maintain the infrastructure they have. But you're also collecting data to say, Mr. Customer, you have Verizon voice over IP and I'm really not a fan. I only sell XYZ voice over IP product and I support it. So if you switch to my voice over IP product on 5/15/2021, when your Verizon contract ends, you can call me for first line support. You don't have to call Verizon anymore. What do you think about that? Now I have a project sold, I have higher customer alignment, and I'm getting a commission from a voice provider, or I'm selling my own white label voice product into a client that was going to call me anyway when it was broke.
Yeah.
So we use this tool under the guise of, Mr. Customer, let me help you create this pretty budget, to collect a ton more info on our client to encourage customer, client alignment with our tools. But this is what our budget looks like printed out to our customer. And this one has no detail on it. If it was detail, it would show 40 contracts. It would show each one with a line item. It would show 2 pieces of network equipment. It would show a switch and a firewall. But I can run it 18 ways to Sunday. This is what their budget looks like. And what we're looking for is this big outlier year, or this little teeny tiny year that doesn't seem to measure up to all the rest. And we're going to go, Mr. Customer, this is a really light year. If you have a great year here, you should pull some expenses forward from here and pull some expenses forward from here, so that you don't get stuck in that really bad year where, where you've got a problem, where you've got some old equipment you haven't replaced. If your customer's private sector, they can stash money and save it. If your customer is in a public sector or somehow has a budget that they have to live to, that they have to spend every last dollar of, they'll start buying this stuff. They'll start buying this stuff in these years in here. If they have money, they have to use it or lose it. So you have to know what your customer's business model is like, so that you know when and how to help them spend their money. And you can't do that unless you're helping them with strategy.
And the other really cool thing about talking about the overall budget is suddenly it's not all about you. You're not here to sell stuff. You're here to plan the whole IT budget, whether it's yours or not. That takes the emphasis off of you're here to sell me stuff.
Yep. And here's the broken down budget. When I do my QBR, I deliver 2 budgets, a 6-quarter budget, which shows what's overdue and what's left due this quarter. And then it'll show 5 quarters going forward. It shows every item line by line. So we know when they have to replace a sonic wall it's 4.2 years old today, it'll be 5 years old on this date, so we're going to replace it. We know now every expense that they have for technology, at least that they've made me aware of, and they can go take this and live to it. I also deliver them that 5-year budget that I just had up there, and I do 6 years, but I call it a 5-year budget because it includes what's left of this year and 5 years in the future. And what we're doing with that, we call it our wide angle guest budget. If you're a Jim Collins fan, that makes more sense to you. But this is our wide angle guest budget. We know they're going to add technology, remove technology, change technology over the next 5 years. But what it really does is gives us an idea of that big looming expense down the road, so that as the IT guy, I never have to walk in there again and go, surprise, Windows 7's over. You owe me $40,000 and I need to replace a bunch of stuff, right? Because that's a really uncomfortable conversation, both for you and for them. They go home and cuss you that night. And you are walking in the door shaking with this big expensive quote, especially as the starting MSP who's not used to delivering 5-figure quotes.
Powerful.
Yeah, I mean, right now, like my biggest client is 25 users, and you know they paid me 3 months in advance, and they were looking at they had another MSP that is quite a ways away from where we're at, and they were looking at a quote that was like, $75,000 a year, plus. Well, it was like 75,000, but that included like upgrading a server and a bunch of networking equipment and stuff. And I came in and I didn't lowball them. I straight up explained like you're still gonna have to spend money on this stuff. Like you're still gonna have to buy a server. You're still gonna have to buy networking equipment. I mean, your stuff is old. You have a router from Staples, and you're not protected the way you should be, and so I think this would help me to be able to take the next step, where instead of they're prepaying for 3 months, they're paying for a year or 2 or 3 at a time. And I think that would definitely help me out in my business. If that makes sense.
And there's 2 ways, if I can, just to handle that lack of alignment, because what you described to me as a customer who has a firewall that doesn't match your standard, right?
Right.
Early on, there's no better time than now to set your standard. So figure out what alignment looks like. What's the firewall that you feel best protects your customer, that you can manage best, that you like working in, that is going to be your gold standard moving forward. Then deliver them a report that looks like one of ours that says, and by the way, your firewall is, as best we can guess, 6 years old. It's end of life. Let's go ahead and buy the right thing. If you do lifecycle management correctly, you can use it to fix a lot of alignment issues over time without hitting that customer with a huge expense. Now, if you're a more mature MSP and you're not scrapping for every dollar and taking all the business, whether it's good business or not, because let's face it, we all start there. If you're a more mature MSP, you might resolve some of those issues as part of your pre-sales process and say, Mr. Customer, in order to come do business with us, thou shalt spend $20,000 and replace all this old junk. As a startup MSP, you might not have that luxury. You might have to take the business with some old stuff. So get lifecycle management in place early and use it as a way to weed out and get rid of some of that old stuff by having these meetings. It's the best advice I think I can give you. And even though you don't use the same platforms we do, if you'd like to have consult with us and talk through what we do, happy to circle back and spend some time.
Yeah, Alex has been a wealth of information. In fact, we were talking earlier this week. It's like, hey, here's our stuff. If you'd like to use it to do the manual process, go for it, because that's not what Lifecycle Insights solves. Lifecycle Insights solves the data collection process. The easy, save yourself time. If you want to do it the hard way, like so many of us are doing, and I'm proud of everybody who does it the hard way versus not at all, then more power to you. So, Alex, you had said you could send us a few things after. What were you thinking?
Marnie has put together a copy of our agenda, the agenda that we use in our MSP, that has stripped off anything that's proprietary to our MSP. So she's going to send that out. We're also going to send out a coupon code for anybody that's interested. We'll give them 10% off any paid subscription for 2020. So they'll get a year off, a year at 10% off.
The other piece is, just as a little nugget for the future, and Shelby, this might be of interest to you because this doesn't require data collection from one of our tools. Our next release will involve a scheduler, which will allow you to start aligning clients to a schedule. So just as a little nugget, I'll send you the contact information of how you connect with us on Twitter, or get our blog posts, so that when that release comes out, you could take a look at that. Don't worry, Alex, I got approval to say that, that's going to be live in the site. So that might also be, I'll send some literature around what would be coming in that regard, as well as the templates like Alex mentioned. And if I could just add, sorry, Alex, can I finish?
No, go ahead. Yep.
Just as an aside to a piece of the conversation from earlier, where Alan, you said, how do you know what the business direction is going, right? If you're not in their space. There's a great book about consulting. So my background is in customer success as well. There's a great book, so excuse the title, but it's called Getting Naked by Lencioni. I think it's Peter Lencioni. And it is all about how to be consultative when you don't have to be an expert in the space, but you really it's that strategic partner, that trusted advisor relationship. And I think that's an interesting, it's sort of what Alex described. Like, you can go in there not knowing exactly how the dental office may be purchasing assets, but still work with them to consult. So Alex, I'll pass that back over to you. Sorry if I derailed you.
No, that's perfect. The only thing I was going to say was make sure you follow up with us on social media, stay in touch, sign up for our newsletter, because we are always adding new data sources. I'll be very honest, Zoho is probably not very high on our list just because of the small number of folks who are using it. However, most of those products have an export to Excel format or into a CSV, and one of the features that we will release will be a CSV export sometime next year. That's probably going to be a later next year feature. We've got some bigger stuff for Q1 and Q2, but there will be a way to just import raw data from CSV at some point in the future.
Excellent.
You can probably see in the chat, I'm sending over some of our social media and ways to contact us. And there's always info at Lifecycle Insights.
So one topic I hinted at early on and we didn't cover it, so I'd like to have a quick conversation about it, is what's the alternative to calling a QBR, since it's not always a quarterly business review?
In my MSP, we call it a strategic business review. I sat in on a session with Alex Rogers when we were Chartech partners 6 or 7 years ago, and he's probably the most politically incorrect MSP speaker that you'll ever talk to. So I'll leave all the expletives out. But his basic message to the room was, he asked everybody to stand up. He says, "Who does their QBRs when they get around to it?" And half the room sat down. "Who does their QBRs once or twice a year?" And the other half of the room sat down. And he says, "Then why are you calling them quarterly business reviews?" And we left there calling them technical business reviews, and we've since turned it into a strategic business review. I think that's really what it ought to be, and I think that's part of the evolution process. At that point, when I left there, I was still going to my clients and going, "Look, we patched all your stuff. Look at this report. There's a pound of paper and it's cool." And we would literally sit there and talk about that, and I had trouble getting clients to come back and schedule with me and do these things. Now that we've elevated it to the next level to talk strategy, it's really become something that is easier to schedule, easier to do, and it just makes more sense. And the only other thing I'll add to that is when you stop calling it a QBR, it opens you up with the ability to say, I have this customer who's in the medical industry who is high technology, high compliance, and needs to talk to me every quarter. In fact, they may even need a monthly check-in phone call along with it, their quarterly review. And then I've got this customer over here who's in manufacturing, and they make sprockets and cogs, and they're in a commoditized industry, and they can barely invest in technology because it gets them nowhere, because they're out in a factory somewhere machining parts, and all they really have to have is a billing and lading system. So they use QuickBooks and nothing else. They only need to talk to me once a year. And in between, we can send them an email with an asset list and help them firm it up. We can send them a user list and let them true it up. We can send them a quarterly email or something. Maybe we can have a remote semi-annual call. We don't need to go there every year or every month, every quarter to do these. So we have a blog post out on our blog. Go check out Lifecycle Insights. Click on the blog. You'll see a blog post about segmentation. We talk about breaking your clients into those segments of the folks who need it annually, the folks who need it semi-annually, the folks who need it quarterly. Start that young, start that early, because it's really hard to go back to the customer who you wrote in their contract that they will meet with you quarterly and then tell them that they don't need it and they don't deserve it.
All right, so we'll open it up to just any more questions before we leave. So what some of the takeaways that I had from this was start from where you're at, whatever you will do, right? Be flexible, hence getting rid of the word quarterly. and be strategic. And of course, that's easier said than done. Most of this conversation was about how to be strategic in those ways. Did I miss some other highlights?
No, I think the last thing to add that we didn't touch on was make your QBR your own. I'll give you all the content I use, but it doesn't mean you can present it with your personality and your MSP, who might be an MSSP, who might just be a standard MSP, who might be mostly break fix and kind of headed towards MSP. There's nobody who doesn't need to do these, but everybody has a little bit of a different niche, a little bit of a different focus. So don't be afraid to take a tool like ours or any other tool in the market and use part of it, most of it, all of it, and still make it your own. By making it your own, you make it easy to deliver and it comes naturally, which makes you more believable and more trustworthy and more of that consultant, as opposed to some guy who bought a package online and printed a bunch of reports and walked in and has to try and explain it.
Well said. As one of my clients taught me, no matter how good the consultant, it's still my business.
True story.
All right. So let me do a quick wrap up here. I will get with Marnie after this for what content we want to make sure we send to all of our registered attendees. We had several dozen register. So we'll get all that content out there before we send it out so they all get that. This was a quick look at our website, the fact that we do have some QBR related items out there. Nowhere near as pretty as Alex's, and I will probably be taking some notes and taking another pass at our QBR process. Some other upcoming ITDUG stuff. We're always looking for what content is next. Maybe I haven't polled the group in a while, and so it may be time for that. So we'll definitely look for one of those in January, so stay tuned. You also might be seeing the name Ina Gabrick on the ITDUG forum as an admin. She's one of our marketing staff. So she's joined Sky, who we announced a few months ago, in helping approve members, create polls, just kind of keep an eye on things, post these events. So stay tuned to that. The usual free resources, if you're not a member of ITDUG, there's the FB link. Our website has some content. You're always welcome to contact me and I can connect you. But in the follow-up email, we're going to get you how to get a hold of Lifecycle Insights as well, and take advantage of their the discounts they offered, as well as how to take advantage of their forms and other useful information for running your own QBR. Any final parting words before we adjourn?
Thanks for having us. Nice talking to everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a good sport, Shelby, and participating with us. Loved it.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.